You punch in for your shift. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and you already know today's going to break you. Your manager's sick again. Third time this month, leaving just a skeleton crew to handle the opening rush. The popcorn machine's making that grinding noise that means it'll die mid-shift. The soda fountains leaking sticky syrup onto the floor, and there's already a line of customers checking their phones, impatient before the doors even open. You adjust your polyester uniform, force a smile, and prepare for 8 hours of being treated like you're invisible. It wasn't always this way. You remember when this job seemed like the answer to your problems? 3 weeks ago, you walked into the hiring manager's office thinking you'd hit the jackpot. She had this friendly smile, asked softball questions like, "Can you work on weekends? And are you good with people?" The entire process took minutes and barely scratched the surface of what you were about to sign up for. You nodded eagerly, desperate for any paycheck after 2 months of rejected applications and dwindling savings. The whole interview lasted maybe 15 minutes. She barely glanced at your application. Just asked if you could start on Monday. You thought it was because you were impressive. You didn't realize it was because they hired anyone with a pulse and working limbs. The job description made it sound simple. Sell tickets, sweep floors, maybe catch a free movie during your break. Customer service would be rewarding work, she said. Air quotes implied but not spoken. You pictured yourself helping families pick the perfect seats, maybe getting employee discounts and popcorn. What they didn't mention during the cheerful chat was the skeleton crew staffing, the ancient equipment held together with duct tape and prayers, or the customer who'd treat you like malfunctioning furniture. The job posting said, "Team member." It should have been more honest and advertised for a human punching bag with flexible hours. You signed papers compromising to smile through abuse for entry-level pay that doesn't cover rent, though they called it competitive wages with a straight face. Training lasted exactly 2 shifts, shadowing Jessica, who'd been there 6 months and already had the 1,000-yard stare of retail trauma. She taught you the essentials. How to clean vomit from theater seats without losing your lunch. How to kick the soda machine in just the right spot when it starts dispensing pure syrup. Her voice was flat when she explained these weren't official procedures, just survival tactics learned through trial by fire. The unwritten rules came fast and brutal. Never tell customers you're understaffed, even when you're running concessions alone during the Friday night rush. Always apologize, even when the problem isn't remotely your fault. The customer's always right. Even when they're screaming about movie start times they mixed up. Clock out exactly on time or management gets pissy about overtime. But also, somehow, finish all your closing duties in those exact hours. Jessica whispered these truths between official training modules about providing excellent guest experiences. The employee handbook was a masterpiece for corporate fiction. Growth opportunities meant maybe becoming a shift leader for 50 cents more per hour. Competitive wages translated to matching fast food pay. Benefits included the privilege of buying health insurance you couldn't afford on your salary. Jessica's manager, Sarah, made $12 an hour and still lived with 3 roommates, splitting grocery bills and hoping her car didn't break down before payday. Your first solo shift. You genuinely thought you were ready. You'd memorized every concession combo price, practiced your customer service voice on your bedroom mirror, even felt a flicker of pride wearing that polyester uniform with that company logo. The naive optimism lasted exactly until your first customer interaction. He started yelling before you finished explaining the ticket prices, demanded to speak to a manager who was in a meeting, according to your radio calls, then stormed out threatening to leave a bad review. True to his word, you found yourself mentioned by name in a 1-star Google review that called you incompetent and rude for explaining movie showtimes. Your stomach dropped reading those words, knowing future customers might see them, knowing your manager definitely would. That interview wasn't a job offer. It was recruitment into an invisible army where your enemy isn't some distant corporation, but a system designed to extract maximum labor for minimum cost. You're fighting a war where the battlefield is customer service. Your weapon is forced politeness. And your armor is a thin polyester shirt that shows every stain. You clocked in that first day thinking you'd found employment. You didn't know you'd enlisted in survival training disguised as hospitality, where every shift teaches you how much abuse one person can absorb while still saying, "Have a great day," with a smile. Wow. And tonight, you're about to learn just how brutal the training can get. 7 p.m. hits, and the evening rush crashes over you like a freight train loaded with impatience and entitlement. 3 blockbusters starting within 20 minutes, 2 registers dead from this morning power surge, and you're manning concession solo because management is always missing when you need backup. The line snakes past the movie posters, wraps around the arcade games, and keeps growing as more customers pour through the glass doors. Phones already out, checking Showtime apps like you personally delayed their entertainment. Every face in that line screams urgency, like missing the opening credits will ruin their entire weekend. A family of 6 approaches your counter, wanting separate orders because little Tim is lactose intolerant, and mom's on keto, and dad wants the jumbo everything. Behind them, complaints blur together. Expired student discounts from 2019. Demands about signed seating, someone yelling about why they can't sit just anywhere like the old days. As if you personally invented every policy to ruin their night. The popcorn machine chooses this exact moment to have a mechanical breakdown. Mid-scoop, it jams and starts spraying kernels across the floor like confetti celebrating your misery. You drop to your knees, frantically collecting the scattered mess while customers stamp their feet and check their phones, sighing loud enough to make sure you hear their displeasure. The sound echoes off the lobby walls. Taps, sighs, muttered complaints about slow service. Above you, the soda fountain starts dispensing pure syrup instead of Coke, creating a sticky brown puddle that's somehow your fault too. Your manager, Kevin, materializes just long enough to lean over the counter and whisper, "Pick up the pace," before vanishing back into his office to handle important paperwork that looks suspiciously like scrolling Facebook. You're already moving as fast as physics allows. But 30 people can't be served simultaneously, and every delay earns you dirty looks and eye rolls from customers who think service work operates on magic rather than human limitations. The mess incident breaks something inside you. Middle-aged guy in a polo discovers someone left chewing tobacco spit in his cup holder from the last showing, and somehow this becomes your fault. He hurls his change at your chest, quarters and dimes scattering across the counter and floor while he mutters, "Useless kids these days," loud enough for everyone to hear. You crawl under the counter collecting his coins, face burning with humiliation, knowing everyone's watching this public degradation. The family behind him quietly says, "We're sorry about that," when they reach your register, and that small kindness almost destroys you more than the cruelty did. Your hands shake, counting change back, uniform shirt soaked with sweat that smells like artificial butter and desperation. Your phone rings constantly throughout the chaos. People wanting showtimes were repeated 60 times today, asking for directions to a theater they could have googled, complaining about ticket prices you didn't set and can't change. You've answered between customers, voice getting harsher with each call, explaining the same information over and over while juggling orders and cleaning spills. One caller spends 5 minutes yelling about concession prices before hanging up without buying anything. By 8 p.m., your feet throb in those cheap non-slip shoes that aren't nearly as comfortable as the job posting promised. Your back aches from constantly bending to clean spills, restock supplies, and pick up trash that customers drop right next to garbage cans. You've been screamed at by more strangers in one shift than most people encounter in months, each interaction chipping away at your faith in basic human decency. The rush finally breaks, leaving you standing in a war zone of sticky floors, scattered napkins, and empty candy boxes. You survived the dinner rush, but the shift's far from over, and you can already hear suspicious mechanical sounds echoing from the theater that promised tonight's disaster are just getting started. Theater 7's projector dies 20 minutes into the biggest blockbuster of the weekend, and you get to be the messenger delivering catastrophic news to 200 people who just paid $35 each for tickets and snacks. The screen goes black mid-explosion. House lights flicker on, and you hear that collective groan that means your night just became a nightmare. Your radio crackles, with Kevin's voice telling you to handle it, while he hides behind the promise that corporate will send maintenance within the hour because we don't have in-house tech staff. A policy that leaves you facing the mob alone. You walk down that theater aisle knowing you're about to become everyone's personal villain. The face they'll blame for ruining their Friday night plans. These people drop serious money tonight. $20 for tickets, 15 more for popcorns and drinks, and now their entertainment's dead. They don't want technical explanations about aging equipment or maintenance schedules. They want someone to scream at, someone to hold responsible for their wasted time and money. A guy in the third row immediately starts yelling about refunds and free passes before you even explained what happened. Near the back, a mother with 3 kids starts crying because this was her only night out this month. Her one escape from work and bills and exhaustion. And you understand her pain, but can't resurrect dead projectors with sympathy. Your radio calls for help. Get the same response every time. Maintenance won't arrive for at least an hour. Maybe 2 if there's traffic. Corporate policy lets you offer passes for another showing, but every showtime tonight is sold out. You're trapped between impossible company rules and furious customers who don't care about policies when their plans are ruined. The crowd gets uglier by the minute. Voices rising, demands getting more aggressive, and you're the only target for their mounting rage. The invisible labor kicks into overdrive now. You're not just processing refunds, you're playing therapist to disappointed families. Security guard against increasingly hostile customers, and tech support for equipment you weren't trained on projector repair. Yet, you're expected to fix morale as well as film. A group of teenagers in the front row starts filming you with their phones while you explain the situation, probably planning to post your incompetence on TikTok or Instagram. You force that customer service smile, knowing one viral video could cost you this job you can barely afford to lose. Your face becoming internet content for strangers to mock. Between handling Theater 7's disaster, you're sprinting to check other projectors that sound suspicious, praying nothing else breaks tonight. You clean spilled drinks in the lobby while fielding angry phone calls. Restock candy while explaining the same technical failure to different group of customers. And discover someone left chewing tobacco spit in a cup holder that you now get to sanitize with your bare hands. Every task gets interrupted by someone demanding immediate solutions you can provide, creating this constant cycle of frustrated customers and incomplete work. The emotional labor crushes you more than the physical running around. You absorb everyone's disappointment, apologize for corporate equipment failures, maintain a professional composure while being treated like malfunctioning furniture. Your feelings don't register in customer satisfaction surveys. Only their experience matters, their convenience, their entertainment. You swallow every insult, every dismissive comment, every demand that you personally fix problems completely outside your control or pay grade. The projector finally gets fixed 2 hours later, long after most customers left angry and dissatisfied. A few people understand the equipment breaks sometimes, that minimum wage employees don't control technical failures, but they're outnumbered by those who left one-star reviews mentioning your name specifically. You're exhausted from being everyone's emotional punching bag, from absorbing hours of displaced anger about problems you didn't create and couldn't solve. Tonight, you learn that your real job is absorbing boardroom cuts and customer fury with a smile you don't feel. And the pay won't even cover your next tank of gas. The clock on the wall shows 10:25, and your shift finally ends in 5 minutes. You punch out after 8 hours of psychological warfare disguised as customer service, sleeping slightly on a spot of old popcorn butter that somehow survived the night's cleaning. Your feet rub in cheap shoes, voice hoarse from forced politeness, uniform reeking of artificial butter and industrial cleaner. The parking lot's empty, except for your beat-up Honda and Kevin's SUV. He'll stay another hour doing paperwork that pays him $12 an hour. You sit in your car for 5 minutes, just breathing. Your phone glows with missed texts, offers you can't accept because your bank balance is still on life support. And when the sun rises, you'll suit up again in the polyester armor that never gets cleaned.